All right. Hallelujah. Abba Yahweh Sabaoth. We thank thee, Father, for the grace, for the strength, for the ruach of conquering. One more day, one more moment, one more program. Abba, we praise thy name. We thank thee. We exalt thy Shem, thy renown, Father, for thou art great, thou art good, and thou art with us. Thou covers us, leads us, is the light unto our feet, our path before us. Father, don't allow us to ever stray from it. We praise thee, Abba, and in this day we bring thee one more time recognition, and we ask that thou will lead us, that thou will show us through Eric, thy servant, thy son, that thou would speak to us and continue to open up the meaning of thy letters, what thou hast said, thy word, Father, that in this day thou would cut us from the world and into thee. B'Hashem Yosha. Amen.
And so here it is. Is this what, the 11th of May? Is it? I don't have my computer on, so I can't see. We're doing the letter Het of Psalm 119. And interesting, they shut down Skype, and today is the first time we're trying to get access to the Teams program, and everybody's locked out. Hardly anybody can figure out how to get in, and that's why we're running a half hour late, but very pertinent. It's exactly the meaning of the letter Het. How apropos. So what is the letter Het? It's essentially, it's drawn as a picture of a fence. If you have it sideways, vertically, it almost looks like a ladder in the ancient writing format. And there's a couple different design patterns of it, but it's essentially a type of barricade, though there's a different word that means fence. The word Het itself doesn't necessarily mean fence, but the concept of the Het is this exclusive place to get access to. Like nobody can seem to get into the call here. So sorry about that. We'll see if we can somehow get the info, the news to people of how to log on. It's not rational as far as I'm concerned. Now, the real smart guys at Microsoft have put this format Teams together. So if anybody's hearing this who wasn't able to get on, that wants to get on, you're going to have to call somebody that knows how to do it. Nicholas has been helpful, but I don't know if he's available for everybody, and anybody who wants to get on, you'll have to go to the chat room and try to figure that out. It's outside, it's way beyond my pay grade. My bailiwick is not to comprehend anything about this stuff. Software programs like this. But that also is a picture of what Het is. In other words, if Het is a limited, a restricted entrance to a place that's not readily available, why is that? Or what is that that is out of reach to most people? So I could say, well, anything which is guarded and protected, kept out of reach of the common, it's not like a city park where anybody can just wander through. The Mishkan itself was not like going to a local church where anybody could walk in. As a matter of fact, only the Levites, the priests, were allowed to go into the Mishkan and do stuff. So if you were a common person who wanted to bring a sacrifice for some reason, you'd bring your sacrificial animal up to the gate of the Mishkan. And this is just my understanding, but from what I understand, you didn't enter into the Mishkan. That was only for the Levites and the priests. When I see Levites and the priests, it's like, well, if priests were Levites, the Levites were also the workmen. Those who wrestled the animal that they were trying to kill were the priests, but then who cleaned up and who sliced the carcass and did this and that. And then there was right at the gate, it says, was this barbecue grill, bronze altar, as it's called. And then there's a tent covered place back a ways from the fence. And halfway between the altar and the covered place is the laver, the bronze laver. Now, when Solomon built the temple, that was 500 years or so after Moses, coming from the book of Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy. The Mishkan was set up in the wilderness, and it was a certain format. There was no, that was prescribed exactly by Elohim. There was no pattern. There was no exact command to build the temple a certain way. Neither Solomon's temple, nor the second temple, nor this thing they're talking about, the third temple, although in Ezekiel 42, it talks about a temple. And from what I understand, nobody knows whether the temple laid out in detail in Ezekiel 42 and the chapters following, that's ever going to be made, whether it's one made, you might say, in the heavens or in the coming kingdom, whether it's a heavenly kingdom or earthly kingdom, or whether it's just a metaphorical concept that's listed there. You should make it so big and have so many rooms and this and that and the other. It's like, but that temple was completely different than the Mishkan. So the pattern, Habanit, Tav, Bet, Nun, Yod, Tav, Tabanit. I think of it like, well, if you wrote cabinet in English, Cabinet, cabinet, tabinet, words rhyme. It's almost the same words. There's the letter Tav, and then Bet, Nun, Yod, and then Tav. Well, Tav is a consonant phonetic sound, but you use it as a prefix or a suffix, in this case, both. It doesn't change the root word in the middle. What it does is it makes it typically, from my understanding, which might not be 100%, but it makes the word not present, but past or future, essentially. It's like, well, what word is in the middle? Bet, Nun, Yod. Well, that's the word that says my son, Beni, Bet, Nun, Yod, my son. What do you mean not present, but past or future? Well, what else does it do? Well, Tav is the letter that's a mark or a sign or a symbol known as an oat. So if you hear otiot, those are symbols or letters of the alphabet. Aleph-Vav Tav, ot, and then Yod-Vav Tav, ot would be my symbol, or that, talking about that symbol. Then Vav Tav is the plural. So when you hear somebody mention otiot, that's the symbols. There's the symbols, the letters, the glyphs of the letters of the alphabet, or the otiot. Well, if those are all Tavs, essentially, they're all marks, they're symbols, they're scratchings, they're etchings, they're logograms, it's a drawing of a little glyph of something that means something, that represents something. So the easy way to remember that is, if you're signing a contract, typically in America, though, somebody will write an X and they say, okay, right here at the X, write your name. So you write your name. That authorizes the contract, validates it. Well, if you are illiterate, or you crippled and you can't write your whole name, legally, if you just write a mark, so some people's signatures, as a matter of fact, are not writing out the letters of their names. They're just a line or just an X or some kind of scratching. That's just as good as signing your name, because you are making a mark that I sign up for this agreement in full disclosure. I'm fully aware of what it means to me, what it means to the other person, and I'm standing in agreement. And if somebody tries to pull a sneaky term, the fine print, it's fraud. Well, they can say, hey, no, I wrote it down in the fine print and I told the guy to read it. The intent of a contract is supposed to be full disclosure. The intent of a legal contract is both parties are absolutely aware of all the ins and outs, all the big print and all the little print. No sneaky business. Every time somebody tries to do fine print with sneaky business, technically it's a degree of fraud. Now, legally, you try to prosecute that in court, they might say, hey, listen, the fine print was on the contract, and they told you to read the contract, and you signed where they put the X, then it says right there, yes, I have read all these terms, and I agree. And you'll find that both online, and you'll find it on a paper written contract. And if you say, I don't have time to read all this stuff, it's all mumbo jumbo, it's out of my verbiage, and well, then you can't proceed. Say, well, I want to use the program. Listen, just scroll down where it says sign here, click it, and then you're good to go. And it's like, do you have any idea what you just signed up for? How many rights you signed away? What you think are your rights are no longer your rights. No, I just clicked it so I could proceed because I have an interest in using the application or using the dynamics of the relationship. And people do this all the time. They sign their life away without knowing. And then they try to say, hey, you should have read the signed terms. I can't read the terms and conditions when they're so small I can't read them. Well, then get some glasses. And it's like, I don't have time. I'm trying to do this so I can do that. It's like, hey, nobody to blame but yourself. It's like, what the heck? That's exactly what the hetness is. Just so you know. Het is, here's an area with certain specific terms and conditions. And the people that get in are those who, fully aware of what they're signing up for, say, I am willing, I hope I'm able, I want to, I'm willing, and I have a desire for engaging in this relationship. And all those who say, no way, I'm not going to go along with that. Okay, you're excluded, you're out. That's exactly, in my understanding, that's exactly the whole nature and business of the letter het. Well, when I was talking about the Zion a couple weeks ago, it was to identify a specific man. Hey, behold this man. Hey, Vav, Zion. Zion, hey, means to identify. Zion, hey, hey is to identify. Zion, hey means this. And Zion, ALEF-TAV means this. So you're identifying what? The Vav, the man. It's like, who was put to the weapon, right? That's YHUH. And then he's thrown into the tomb, Ket. And Tet, the round rock rolled in front of it. It's like, well, wait a minute. Is het a contract or is it a tomb? Now, I could say because het is a protected zone, I could look at a castle and say, well, a castle is a fortress. It's an armed camp. It's protected. It's shielded. It's got defensive walls. Probably has offensive weapons up on, cannons or whatever it might be. Archers in the olden days, catapults maybe that could throw stuff out and if anybody's attacking it. But the idea is it's a defensive position. A fortress could be like a police station. It's also, this is just where a nest. The word Ziklag literally is where you get the name for military boot, like Caligula, the Roman emperor. David's city fortress was called Ziklag. And when he went storming out with all his armed men, it was like a swarm of hornets coming out. That's another picture of this armed camp and this picture of the letter het, an enclave, a bastion, a place where you're holed up, protected, but then you can come charging out at full speed. Stables for your horses could be a het. Well, you could have a prison. You could lock somebody up who you don't want to get out and keep them trapped. That's also a picture of a het. So a crypt, a grave, is a picture of a het, in which case with YHUH, he was crucified and thrown into the tomb. So I picture the tomb as the het. If it's a castle, you could have a moat, the quintessential castle with a moat around it, or castle built on an island. And so you have it inaccessible whether it's surrounded by a wide open place so nobody can hide behind anything trying to sneak up on the castle, a plain, build a castle out in the middle, or whether it's on an island in the middle of the sea to make it more difficult for people to have to be in ships to attack the castle, like Alcatraz Island in the San Francisco Bay. They turned it into a prison. Before it was a prison, people lived there. And Catalina Island off of Los Angeles, same type of thing. I think it's about 20 miles offshore, 15, 20 miles offshore from the coast of Los Angeles. And they say giants used to live out there. They found graves with giant skeletons. And so those giants lived there. They could easily come on shore to go to the grocery store hunting for things to take back to their island. I'm just saying this idea of this protected place that nobody has access to except for the few who are familiar with it, who live with it, who are signed up for it, that's the het. And a het could be a number of different things. And so, well, what does that got to do with a fence? It's a metaphorical fence, whether the fence is the moat around the castle or barbed wire fence or the attention you give a garden. So a garden is not just your regular yard, but it's an exclusive little place, smaller than the whole by saying little. And you might put a fence around the garden, or you'll at least put your attention to the garden, and you guard the things you plant there, whether it's herbs to eat or special flowers or things that you don't want people to step on that are more delicate or more useful for some reason, but you're going to water those specially. You just treat it with a focused attention of regard. That's what you put in the garden. Like putting a barbed wire fence around a certain place like a treasury or some other sort of protective wall. Well, if I start looking at Bible stories, I can see hetness if I have a mind for finding it. So, for example, if you look in Genesis, when Abraham had two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Isaac means laughter. Ishmael means Elohim hears. Shema El is actually what the word is, not Ishmael. That's the English stupid way of pronouncing it. It's actually E, the letter Yod, means he will. Shema, Shin Mem Ayin, hear, listen, pay attention. El, two-letter short form of saying Elohim. So it's basically saying Elohim, he will hear. Well, is that saying Ishmael will listen to Elohim? Maybe. Or is it meaning Elohim will listen to Ishmael? Both ways, actually. Shema El. Well, should all be named after Ishmael. What a great thing. Elohim hears him, hears his voice, and he hears Elohim's voice. Well, I want to sign up for that. Well, so here's the question. I remember when I was a kid going to a Presbyterian church, and I've heard it many times since then. There are certain times when someone would be ill, call for the prayer chain. Say, whoa, what's the prayer chain? Well, it's 14 ladies who have agreed to be on the prayer chain, older ladies that are sitting around with not much to do. Necessarily, they're not going to a job, meaning that they have their mind and they're distracted having to do this or that, but call them up and they will all get on the horn, as it's called, with each other and start praying. The prayer chain, it works wonders. What do you mean it works? Well, God hears the voice of the prayer chain, ladies. Now, I'm kind of making a picture out of that, but really what it is anybody can be on the prayer chain. It doesn't have to be a lady who's not at work. It could be somebody who's working. It's just like, well, if you're on the prayer chain, when there's a particular need, call up and say, yes, send up a prayer. You got it, boy. It's like, well, wait a second. How many people make a difference on the prayer chain? Do you just need 2 or 3? I mean, Yeshua did say, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I'm with you. and nobody gets access to my Father except through me. So wouldn't 2 or 3 people gathered in the name of Jesus say, hey, will you please heal this person? Can you please pay attention over here? Can we put this matter before you and have you regard? Yes, Yeshua says, you betcha. I'll take it to my Father right now. Is that the way it works? Well, then why do you need a prayer chain? If you're gathered in his name, well, how do you gather in his name? Is that the qualification? Is that the moat around the castle? Now, so if the het is Yahuwah is listening to our voice, that's an exclusive zone. In fact, if you look at Proverbs, what is it, 19:8 or something like that? Anyway, you look, there's this verse in Proverbs, and it's a very disturbing verse. This verse in Proverbs is essentially a Zion. It's that which cuts off. It says, he who turns his ear from hearing the Torah, even so. That word even so is like a mirror. It's spelled gimel mem, gam, like a camel, gimel mem lamed, gamel, like a camel goes back and forth, like a ship on the seas, like a truck on the highway, a camel in the desert, transporting goods, merchandise back and forth from city to city. The reciprocation, the reciprocal of the man who turns his ear away from hearing the Torah, Gimel Mem, back at you, a mirror response is, even so, your prayer is an abomination. Now, it doesn't say your prayer cannot be heard from Elohim. It doesn't say those words. What it says is, even so, your prayer is an abomination. Well, what's the word for abomination? Well, there's basically 2 words. It'll abominate you, or you will be an abomination. And there's a few things in the Old Testament, in the scripture, in the Torah, that are called an abomination. One of them happens to be witchcraft and sorcery. One of them is homosexuality. And one of them is eating pork or rats or birds of prey. If you eat it, it will abominate you, is what it says. And I think the word is tet mem alef, but it also, the same word that means abominate means thick, dull, stupid. Well, that's kind of like a cancer cell. It thickens up and it won't behave as that type of cell in the body at that location is supposed to function properly. So that's thick, dull, stupid. That's my understanding. So it's like, if you eat certain food or conduct certain behavior, it will abominate you. You will become like a cancer cell. Doesn't mean you'll get cancer. It just means you become like that, where you're not functioning properly. Maybe your physical body won't work. Maybe your mind won't work. Maybe your spiritual connection is blockaded. The bridge washed out, or a traffic jam, and you can't get your words heard by Elohim. Well, call the prayer chain. They get through. Well, wait a minute. What if none of them are listening to the Torah? What good would it do to call the prayer chain to petition the Lord in prayer if none of them are listening to the Torah? I say that phrase, petition the Lord in prayer. I remember the Doors, the music group, the Doors. And the lead singer on this one album, it was in Strange Days. Anyway, he starts it off saying, when I was in seminary school, they told us that you can petition the Lord in prayer. Petition the Lord in prayer. And then he screams into the microphone, you cannot petition the Lord in prayer. Now, at the time I heard that, I was in college, and I'd never heard that before, but some friends had the album. And I remember hearing that and thinking, well, that's a lie. Here this guy, popular band, some of the songs were pretty good, I thought, but he's lying. You can petition the Lord in prayer. And here I am, a Christian, entertaining myself, listening to this music for entertainment's sake. What's entertainment? Oh, it just makes you feel good. Just listening to a song, la-di-da. It's like, no, this isn't la-di-da. This is a lie. And a lie is designed to steal something from you, trick you. In this case, stealing the truth, isn't it? In which case, if you're stealing the truth, that's a setup for death. So I was sitting there, was it Jim Morrison was his name? Anyway, I'm entertaining myself with lies, thievery, and attempted murder. And I'm the victim. Why would I do that? I don't know. I don't care. Oh, ignorance and apathy? What? Oh, I like the music. What the heck am I doing? Well, it's just music. Is it true? Can you petition the Lord in prayer? Well, yeah. Well, then why is he telling people and screaming into the microphone and telling it? Why is he communicating the message that you cannot? Well, he's trying to get a bunch of people to realize they're on their own. Yahweh is inaccessible to them. Well, then you better go find a priest. Or you better figure out how to catch his ear if you want to request or speak. And then as I read closer in the scripture, I see that there's places where Yahweh says he's going to turn his face from us, from his people, Israel. And I see where it talks about metaphorically the heavens are like brass and the earth is like iron, in fact, meaning that you can't grow any food and your prayers will bounce off it. They won't make it into the heavens. And then I read something like Isaiah 58, and the subject matter in that chapter starts off talking about fasting, people not eating, or people punishing their physical body with a whip, with no sleep, with no hygiene, thinking that if they torment, afflict their flesh and their mind somehow, their voice will be heard in heaven. And then Elohim, Yahweh himself, responds in Isaiah 58 and says, you think this is the fast I have declared that I chose for you, my people Israel? That a man simply doesn't eat a meal and because of that, his voice is heard in heaven? That's not the way it works. What do you think this is? You say, well, we're told that's the way it works. If we don't eat, then you'll hear us. Really? No, why don't you go out and relieve the oppression of the poor, of the needy, of the lied to? Why don't you help those less fortunate than you? Then, and then he describes these good things that'll happen. Well, then he goes on to say, and if you call the Sabbath day a delight, and if you will determine for yourself, essentially, because he didn't say, and I noticed this of myself one time, because the Torah study group that I was going to, they put out a bulletin each week, as it were, writing up, and they always had this verse from Isaiah 58, if you will call the Sabbath day a delight, then such and such will happen, which is some good stuff. And it's like, well, I didn't find the Sabbath day a delight. As a matter of fact, I found the Sabbath day, having to keep the Sabbath day to be a very rude interruption of productivity, especially when some SDA, Seventh-day Adventists that I knew, and these other people said, well, the day starts at sundown, so on Friday afternoon, you got to start shutting it down. And there was one time we had a concrete pour going on, and you can't just, stop the truck, okay, everybody out of here. It says, sun's almost about to hit the horizon. What? Hey, you should have planned the week better, the day better. You don't pour concrete. It's like, just, wow, what an offense. What an incredible offense. And then you find out that, well, why do the Jews and the SDAs think that the day starts at sundown anyway? Some people say, well, it might be 6 o'clock. It's like, well, Is it when the sun hits the horizon? And I remember one time the sun hit the horizon at about 3. Wait a minute, but if I go up to the top of the hill, it won't hit the horizon for another 2-3 hours. When does the day start? When does the day stop? When is the legal law of the Sabbath day in that? Remember back in the Torah, man, was it in Exodus or Numbers, the guy picked up sticks in the middle of winter. He picked up sticks on the Sabbath day. Kill him. Yahweh said to kill the man, stone him to death. He picked up some sticks. Well, did he go out into the woods and gather a bundle, or did he just pick up some that are sitting here, or did he? It's like, don't even light a fire. Don't worry about the sticks. It's like, gosh darn it, where's the law? Where's the line that if you cross over, don't even get close to the lines, run the other direction. It's like, how does this stuff work? Hey, it's too much for you. You can't figure it out. Go get a priest. They're empowered to know. Why? Because they're inside the het and you're not. Because you're the laity. You're the illiterate. They're the clergy, the clerics, the clerks, the ones who are literate, know how to read these words and know what they mean. Is that the way it works? Well, that's what we're told. The clergy, the clerks, the clerics, the ones who have access to the true words and the meanings of words and know what the laws are. And because it takes so much time and effort and intelligence to comprehend that stuff, it's worthwhile for all of us. Say if 10 men got together and we each give 1/10 of our income to that guy, the 11th guy, then he makes as much as any one of us. If say we're all making the same amount, so we each give a tithe of 10%, then we pay him. You don't have to paint houses, you don't have to mow lawns, you don't have to dig potatoes out in the field. You just keep your nose in the book. You study what these words mean, and you keep your life clean. We'll cover all the bases. You use too much electricity and you got to pay the bill. One of us will cover you, but you appeal to Elohim because you got to be inside that het. I was at an Orthodox church once, and that's actually working for the priest, remodeling his bathroom. And that's what I was told. His job is to just keep his mind and body clean. And he goes beyond the wall, the fence, into the inner sanctum where he petitions with all the concerns of the congregation. And his job is to get the answer, to get the right answer from the Holy Spirit. And he then brings it back out, and it's what's called the dispenser of the graces. As it were, he goes beyond the het, and he has a basket, a tet, which gets filled up from Elohim, from the hand of Elohim, mentally or words or something. And he comes back out and he dispenses to the congregation the graces or the goods from YHUH. That's the priest's job. And, there's certain liabilities or certain danger things on a job. You climb a ladder, you could fall off. You're using power tools, you could lose a finger, lose an eye. Shoveling stuff, you could throw muscle in your back or your leg or something, or fall down a hole. I mean, that's what happens when you do physical work. But the priest's job, boy, this guy was bowing one time and sprained his back. It's like, but he was laid up for a couple of weeks. I'm not mocking. I'm saying that really happened. He was bowing before the Lord in the inner sanctum and tweaked his back, and he was laid up for a couple of weeks. Somebody's got to do that job. And nobody can just take his place because he's the only guy fit and capable, because he's the only guy who has access to that het. So you've got 7 ecumenical councils, Saint Emperor Constantine. And for 2,000 years, we've been told, roughly, that the Het day, the special day, yeah, it's the seventh day, that was decreed by Elohim in Genesis 1, and to Israel on the Ten Commandments, Exodus 20, Deuteronomy chapter 5, and numerous other places. But they determined at the Council of Nicaea to change the day from the seventh to the first day of the week. It just so happened that they had a sun god who was worshipped on Sunday, and that became known as the Sabbath day. Yeah, but the Sabbath day was the seventh day, not the first day. Oh, just call it the seventh day then. Call Sunday the seventh day. Yeah, but it's the first day. Well, look at any calendar. Sunday is the first day, not the seventh. Well, I heard years ago that they were going to change calendars, or somebody changed calendars where Sunday ended up being the seventh day. It's like, yeah, well, whatever. So I know some people who go from the lunar calendar, so they look at the phase of the moon, but then you can't just count 7 and then count 7 and count 7 and count 7 at infinitum. What you have is count 7, then there's every once in a while this other day, because 7 times 4 is only 28, and if you're going by the moon, there's 29 or 30 days in the month. So everything's complicated. How do you know what you're doing? Do you go by the new moon? Do you go by the full moon? Do you go by the quarter phases of the moon? Do you go by the stars? Do you include the sun? When does the day start? Does it start in the evening where it's blended, or does it start at Boker? But the Boker break open. But does Boker mean when it starts getting light, or when you see the sun on the horizon? But what if it's already light because you're down in the valley and the sun's not on the horizon yet? See, everything is really, really complicated, and that's why you need somebody who has access to the words. What I'm saying is these are all very real considerations that I've bumped into with friends over the last 20 years or so, 25 years. Some of these concerns I've had longer than that, back when I was still going to the church. So last week we talked about Malachi 3, verse 22, where it says, Zakaro Torah Moshe Obedi, Asher Zoiti Oto Bachorab Al Kal Israel Chokim Ve Mishfatim. Okay, I went over that in detail. I won't do that again, but the point is, it's a big letter Zion. It's an enlarged. Remember the Torah, or remember Tur, Tav, Vav Resh Tav. Well, there's that letter Tav with Vav Resh in between them. Like the word Tabanit was my son in between the two Tavs. This is the word light, Vav Resh, in between two Tavs. Well, if the two Tavs represent the one signing the contract, then the word Tabanit is two people signing a contract with my son, Benny, in the middle. Well, who's that? I could say, well, that's just the word Tabanit. It means pattern or design. But my son is either Yahusha or it's Israel. If it's Israel, but Israel is one of the signees with the Tav. And I can say, well, there's two signers of a contract with Benny in between. The word for mediator, arbitrator, relay person, relay station. Like if I want to mail a letter, I am one signing and I hand it to the post office, and the post office is the intermediary who delivers it to the receiver. That's the other Tav. I'm just trying to give you these pictures because these pictures are what the words are all about. And I could say here, or Vav Resh is between Tav and Tav. So light is in between the two signatories. What does that mean? See, the word light is spelled Aleph-Vav Resh, a menorah, Nun Vav Resh, or Mem, the place where the Nor goes, but this just, or it's all still the same. It still works that way. Remember the Torah. Well, Tav Vav Resh is where we get the word in English, Tour, T-O-U-R, and Tire, T-I-R-E, which means the round wheel, which also means to go seek or go sightseeing or go spy, reconnoiter, to go looking for stuff. Exploring is also Tav Resh. Tav Vav Resh, Tav Yod Resh. Moshe is to be drawn out from. Moshe was drawn out of the water. You know, remember he was put in the basket, and the princess of the Pharaoh of Egypt found him and draw him out of the water. Obedi is my servant, but Obed also means obedient and worship. Who that, Asher, straight line, I did command. So the Tav Yod suffix, but the word Zadi Vav is command. Zadi Vav Yod, my command that I did command. So it's Zadi Vav Yod Tav Yod. Him, ALEF-TAV Tav Vav. Yeah, but ALEF-TAV Tav, that's a letter. That's a glyph, a graphic. At Horeb, or with desolation, with sword. Ayin Lamed hyphen Kaf Lamed hyphen Israel, connected with all of Israel. And then the last two words there, Chokim and Mishpatim. Well, what's a Het Kuf? That's the law of the 10 Commandments. Ayin Shin Resh is the word 10. It also means to be made wealthy and rich. And then the word translated commandments is Debarim. That's the name of the book of Deuteronomy, Debarim. But that's not the word commandment. That the word Debar is word or matter or thing. But the word law, commanded law, Zadi Vav is to make a command, but the law is the Het Kuf. And then the word Mishpat, Mishpatim is the plural. Mishpat is balance, scales, because Peitet, nobody is above or below. Everything's equity. There's a sword connected with the law and balance scales of equity for all of Israel to be concerned with. And this has to do with that I command him by the use of letters. But see, the word him is just him, ALEF-TAV Tav Vav, as though is the letters. So you got to know what the letters are if you're reading this text in Hebrew and you realize it's not just translated him, it's the otiot. There's these letters that were commanded, yoked with all Israel with a sword. Well, now I get that picture of what they call Lady Justice. You'll see her at courthouses. A woman figurine with a blindfold, doesn't matter who or what, it's like this is justice. What were the terms and conditions and what's going on? And this sword is coming down on the one who's evil, who's the one who's intending harm, who's trying to lie, steal, and kill the other. You get the sword. Doesn't matter. Yeah, but no yeah buts. That's mishpat. That's what this is describing. And it says, remember, well, that's the enlarged weapon. Well, that's the sword of the bet, het, resh, bet, because het, resh, bet, pronounced charav, or charabah, that Horeb, that's the sword. What's Yahweh saying? He's saying, listen, I made an eternal covenant with my people, Israel. Well, not all about the sword. I mean, yeah, you can kill an animal, but the covenant is we're supposed to be blessed, but there's a sword attached. Well, that's why Jesus died on the cross, to absolve us of all our sins. There's a sword with this covenant. Well, what sword? We're going to look at some stuff in Genesis here as part of this study, but we're talking about David and Psalm 119. Let me jump onto that real quick. So at the very beginning, I was saying that we had this way of reading the Psalms. So there's two different ways to read Psalm 119, which we'll do both. One is look at the 8 words, all of which start with the letter het, which are the first word of each of the 8 verses. And the other way is to look at the whole verse for each of the 8 verses, which we'll do. But here's the 8 words. Het lamed kuf yod, chalak-i. So the yod suffix means my. So what's a het lamed kuf? It means my share. my assigned portion, smooth, slippery, like silk ribbon, totally different character, but also it can mean it's a dilemma. So it's also THYLYM QOOF is also the word for an ice rink, smooth and slippery. So you could say, well, everybody else gets this, but I have to have that. Well, wait a minute. The other 11 brothers, sons of Jacob, had a certain way of dealing with each other. And Joseph, the other 10 brothers, anyway, Joseph was the one that they hated. Joseph was the favorite of his father. Joseph was the punk that they wanted to kill him. They tried to kill him, his brothers. But Joseph then was also the one who ended up being vizier, kind of like a prime minister of Egypt. The one that was set apart as being, you might say, where we get the word special or extraordinary. Not like all the other, and that was his assigned portion. And when Moshe said would be the prophecy concerning the inheritance of Joseph, and when Jacob, his father, known as Israel, when he stated the blessing, both times Joseph was given a very THYLYM QOOF prophetic allotment. His assigned portion, his share, because he was mistreated, would be like the swing of the pendulum. As far as it was pushed this way, it'll swing that way. Yahweh says the same thing about Israel, you know? That's one thing I found in reading the scripture, is that Yahuwah said, because Israel betrayed him, betrayed the terms of the covenant, the sword is going to come. And the sword, like the prison of the Het, is going to push Israel for 2,730 years into this really bad place where their enemies dominate them. 2,730 years. We talked about that last week, being able to count, Revelation 13:18. But then Yahweh said, after that time has been fulfilled, Deuteronomy 30 kicks in, when all these things have come upon you, the blessing and the curse, the blessing during the days of David and beginning of the reign of Solomon, and then the curse, for the next 2,730 years after Syria took over, then return to these words I command you today. Oh, which words are those? They're inside the Het, because nobody seems to know about them. Return to these words inside the Het, and then what's going to happen? Oh, then Yahweh said he's going to turn all his attention of favor to his people, and he's going to turn his attention of, now they're in big trouble, furious wrath on Israel's enemies. What part of Christian eschatology does that play into? It's not there. Why is that? So in Christian eschatology, I've heard that right in front of us right now, in a mysterious occasion, whenever that might be, is the rapture. And either 3.5 years later or 3.5 years before, or somewhere, a 7-year tribulation, terrible time. Nobody knows when it's going to hit, but the 7-year tribulation. And then there's this 1,000 years of a reign and of Christ with his people, but nobody knows whether that's in the heavens or on earth or after the tribulation or how it all fits together. But there's this thing, and it's like, yeah, but when does Yahweh's favor get to return to his people? Like he said in Deuteronomy 30 and a bunch of other places, in Ezekiel 36, Ezekiel 37. Yeah, when does that get to happen? Well, that information is kind of like in the Het. Well, we don't know. We can't see it from this side of the Het, but if we're his people and like the clergy, the clerics, we get access to his words, then maybe it'll give us a perspective. Well, why should we worry about that? It's the assigned portion. It's the THYLYM QOOF. And if it's mine, it's THYLYM QOOF-YOD. Like David was saying, the first word of the first verse of the Het section. Well, why should I care about that? That's just some Jewish thing. No, the next word is THYLYM QYTt. Well, THYLYM means sweet and pleasant. This is my bailiwick. This is exactly what is my portion that I get for being the people who are of the assigned portion of the Het Lamed Kuf. The next word, Het Shin Bet Tav Yod Chashab, and that's a great word. I mentioned it before, mentioned it last week, the one from Revelation, to whoever has intelligence, let him calculate what this means. It means Tav Yod suffix to Het Shin Bet. I have calculated, esteemed the value, reckoned the importance. It's an ingenious work. It sums up what? Well, it pulls all these things into consideration and gives you the conclusive regard consideration of what this stuff is about. The next word, Het Shin Tav Yod again makes it mine. Het Shin Tav means the mystery, the secret. Like, what's the meaning of life, the universe, and everything, like in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. It binds like a corset. It gives shape. So to be able to go back to the Het Lamed Kuf, which is Het Lamed Yod, sweet and pleasant, which is my assigned portion, because that's what Yahuwah said about his people, specifically of the house of Joseph. If for me to calculate what that is means I've got to know how to read, know how to count, and then the mystery, the secret of what everybody in the universe, everybody in the planet is trying to figure out. Het Bet Lamed Yod, the next one, I pledge my allegiance. The measured portion, well, that's the part we were just talking about that he said was the assigned portion of his people. That measured portion, Het Bet Lamed, like ropes rigging a ship. Sabotage yields destruction. Well, that means if you betray this, you got that sword coming, but if you play into it, you got all kinds of blessing coming, because that's what he said. And then there's this next word, Het Zadi Vav Tav. Well, Het Zadi is a word for arrow. So Het Zadi Vav Tav is a plural, arrows, Lila. Well, that's at night. Arrows at night, you don't know where they're coming from. You don't know, somebody's sneaking up on you, a sudden raid, you don't know which way to turn. Well, that's like some sneaky attack. Well, who's doing that? People lying to you about what the words mean? And then there's the word Het Bet Resh, Chaver, like Chaverim is the word friends, but it's not just friend, it's an alliance of scholars, of the colors. Like when you join the colors of a certain university or a certain military group, certain club, certain colors at a wedding, maybe a class. But in this case, we got the embroidery colors, blue, purple, red, with white linen, gold trimming. It's symbolic. It's about the words if it's an alliance of scholars of the colors. So I think of blue, purple, red, white with gold trim as being the colors of Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. Yod lines up with the blue, the hand of the creator. Purple, royal decrees, Hey of the Torah. Vav, Adam, red, blood, Messiah, Mashiach, Yahusha. And then Hey, the robes of white linen, robes of righteousness, which is the saints, which are the Talmudim, the taught ones, walking in doing the purple, the first Hey, equivalent with the second Hey, which is walking in the ways of the Torah. There's blue, purple, red, white, and the gold trim is just the regal ornamentation, the Aleph, Dalet, Resh, Adarness, you might say, of it. That alliance of scholars, us. And then the last word, the eighth word, Het Samik Dalet Kaf. Kaf suffix means you. Het Samik Dalet Chasad, Chesed. You are so kind, your refuge of compassion, tender, loving, awesomeness. So that's the Het stuff that David is talking about. Excuse me for a second. Carla, could you tell me where are we on time? I have no idea on this app.
Yeah, I set it up. You have another like 9 minutes and a half. Yeah, I had to come.
Thank you. So for the second part, I'm going to get into the 8 verses that David talked about. But let me mention this, because we're talking about the Mishkan. The Mishkan was laid out with a big white fence. And Andrew Hoy lays it out in the circle with a blue, purple, red fence. Nevertheless, the fence had this embroidery, at least the gateway or the entrance, the way I see it. This may not be exactly what it was, but who knows? Anyway, the point is, the way I see it is the fence itself had blue, purple, red embroidery. It says white linen. Well, okay, I pictured it. So I mentioned the big white fence, it was 6, 8 feet tall, whatever it was. Nobody could just see in. It was around the Mishkan, whether it was a rectangle or whether it was a circle, that's another consideration. Gold trimmings on it. Well, the letter Het is a fenced area. The Mishkan is a fenced area. So there, the letter Het, and because Het, Tet, Yod in the pattern worked as 3 in one group together, Het, Tet, Yod, that's just the code. It's a secret code. Talked about that last week. So Het, Tet, Yod lines up with the Het. Well, right inside was the barbecue grill, bronze altar. Well, the lines of a grill are like, there's the kof, laying flat, you pour something, but the authority lines of Torah, like a kof, that's Lamed, the shepherd staff. Lamed means teach and learn. Teach and learn the lines of the Torah. Lamed bet, lab, that's the word heart. And we think of the heart as a pump, pumping the blood, and kidney, starting with the letter K, starting also in Hebrew, starting with the letter Kaf, is a filter. It filters the blood. It pumps blood and filters the blood. So L and K, Lamed and Kaf, heart and kidney, that's the barbecue grill. That's the equivalent I make in my mind. And then being impregnated, taking his word to heart, there's the laver, the pool of laver, and the living seed in it. So there's the mem, the laver of water, and the noon, the living seed, the baby, the soul within the womb. That's mem and noon. And that's on the outside. So you got lining up with Het, Tet, Yod with Passover, Pesach, Chag HaMatzot, find out how to do what he's commanded, Zadi Vav. That's Mem Zadi Hey, Mem Zadi Aleph, Zadi Vav. That's all Kaf and Lamed stuff. And then you got Mem Noon. Well, that's the pregnancy, the incubation, the days of counting Shavuot. That's the Mem Noon. So then you have, those are the springtime Moedim. And then in the fall, you've got Yom Teruah lining up in the covered place, lining up with the menorah. Yom Kippur lining up with the table of showbread. Sukkot lining up with the altar of incense. And then you have the other veil, and inside the Kadosh Kodashim, the Holy of Holies, the Debar place, you've got the Zadi lining up with the Ark of the Covenant. That's the way I see this pattern. Some people have a different take. That's a different matter. But just to say, somebody had asked me, hey, will you please go through the Beatitudes? Because I've mentioned before, and it's like, where is that I've ever talked about the Beatitudes? I know it was in 2006. I'll mention it now. So Beatitudes in Matthew 5. In seeing the multitudes, it says Yahusha went up to a hill, sat down, and it says he opened his mouth. I find it very peculiar to say the guy opened his mouth. Of course he did. Why do you say that? Because the word peizadi is the word open mouth. Pizza, the way it's patza, the way it's pronounced, but open mouth, that's peizadi. It also means explode and detonate, and it's a picture of the words being made open, or a disclosure of that which was hidden in the Het, put on display. If Yeshua is put into the grave, Het, that's the resurrection. Zadi, Pei-Zadi, the grave opened up. When the Zion Vav was put into the Het and the Tet rolled in front, that's the other side of the 3 days and 3 nights. I see that as the resurrection. So there's at least that. But the Beatitudes, he says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. 5 minutes here. So, well, who's outside the Het? The poor in spirit. If you're not poor in spirit, you got no access to what's inside. It's an exclusive place. So he's telling us what the restriction is. You better be poor in spirit. Well, what's the word poor? Ayin, Nun, Hey. We'll get to that word again later. It's found in Isaiah 58, but it means to be poor. It means to be humbled. It means to be afflicted. It means to be obsessed with something. Obsessed in spirit. What spirit? Ruach, Nephesh, the burdens on your heart. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. You better be taking this stuff seriously. And if you don't find yourself impoverished or paying attention or burdened or humbled by the concern of these things, it's not for you. Goodbye. You want the what's in this hat? The kingdom of heaven? Well, now we're identifying het as that. Then the barbecue grill lines up with the next one. Blessed are they that mourn. They shall be comforted. Well, that lines up with the Torah. What do you mean they mourn? 613 laws. Oh, come on, man. Or do you mourn because you go, hey, they lied to me about this stuff. I thought we didn't have to concern with this. I thought Jesus nailed the Torah to the cross. Oh, man, what have I done with my life? How many years have I wasted? How have I hurt my Father's heart? With no concern, no regard, no care, totally negligent, living my own life to my own understanding, my own religious philosophy, my own culture, and it was offending him and putting another nail into Yeshua all the time. Blessed are they who mourn because they give it a regard. If I line this up with the Lord's Prayer, Abenu, Tefillah Abenu, I could say, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. That's the Mishkan. So the four colors is Yod, He, Vav, He, blue, purple, red, white. Kadosh is your name. So what's inside the chet? Where he's at, his name, the sacredness, the holy regard of Yahuwah's being, his name, his ways, his heart, his spirit, his son, his family, his hosts. It's all in there. And then the next phrase, thy kingdom come. What's his kingdom? Where his will reigns, where everybody does exactly what he said. And if you don't, you're with the adversary, the devil, and you're pitched out. But thy kingdom come then is the Torah, lining up with the barbecue grill, the letters Kaf and Lamed. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, lines up with day 3, lines up with where he separated the water from the earth and put plant life, seeds of life into the earth. He put his word into his people's heart, written on their heart. Take it to heart. Blessed are the meek. They shall inherit the earth. The day the earth was designated as separate from what was nothing but water previous to that. Separating out a certain people, those who will meek. It's almost like the word het noon, chaneni, daisy, chaneni, coquettish, prettified, made graceful and charming. The psalmic, bear fruit. The menorah picture, blessed are they who hunger and thirst after righteousness. They shall be filled. Lines up with give us this day our daily bread. What are you hungering and thirsting for? Well, if it lines up with Yom Teruah, blowing of trumpets, the menorah produces the fruit of light. The trumpet produces the fruit of sound. It has to be filled with oil or filled with breath or being filled with the ruach to bear his fruit. Galatians 5:22, the fruits of the Spirit. The table of showbread, where the loaves of the bread were put, lining up with the letter ayin, lining up with blessed are the merciful, they shall receive mercy. Forgive us our debts as we forgive those who trespass against us. A man's way is returned on his head. What have you been doing? It's what you got coming back at you. That's the balancing of scales of mishpat. The fruit that you've been bearing is now the fruit you're going to eat. So lining up with the letter Pei, the altar of incense, you're going to eat the fruit because your ways are coming back on you and your generation, your family. Blessed are the pure in heart. They shall see Elohim. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. It's like, What do you, where are you having me going? Do you know who Elohim is? Do you know what his words mean? The pei is the mouth that eats the fruit of the ayin that was born on the menorah, the tree of the samik that was sprouted from the noon of the being in the mem. What words are on your heart? And if you're given bad words or genetically modified seed, you're not going to be bearing his fruit. So there's this whole, not only, oh, I know which words to plug into which picture, but then what does that mean? What are the ramifications of it? The seventh position, Ark of the Covenant. Blessed are the peacemakers. They shall be called B'nai Elohim, lining up with the letter Zadi, lining up with the Sabbath day, lining up with the phrase, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory. Blessed are the peacemakers, because you have a different perspective of life. What's your het? What do you think is going on? If you think that it's all up to you, that's not the het of Yahweh. If you think Yahweh said he'll cover me, even though somebody planned to do evil, as David saw, we'll get into that in the next hour. If you think I'm on my own, it's whatever I can do for myself, you got the wrong het. The only way to have the het of Yahuwah, which we'll see with Abraham in Genesis, is to know the covenant of Yahweh for you. If you abide by his terms of the contract, otherwise you're getting the sword. You got to count on that. You got to trust that. What's the word trust? Bet, tet, het, betacha. Full basket, fence. You've got to know what this is all about and trust him and count on it. Insured, assured, secured with certainty. You will know for certain. One of the phrases he said to Abraham, just to fill out the last of the Mishkan pattern here with the Beatitudes, letter kuf, like the question mark, exclamation point, like the pillar of fire, pillar of smoke. Blessed are you, this overview, blessed are you when men shall revile you and persecute you and say all manner of evil against you for my sake, for so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. Could say that lines up with forever amen of the Lord's Prayer. So there's the Beatitudes and the Lord's Prayer, both looking at this Mishkan pattern. And you could say there's these certain stages of developing consciousness. And then the overview is, it doesn't matter what anybody says because you have got a different consciousness. And I'm going to suggest here that what David's talking about, which is what my consciousness is the het is, what did Yahuwah say? What does that mean? And what am I supposed to be doing? And as a friend told me a few years ago, don't mistake these things. There's what you think you are doing. There's what you're supposed to be doing. And there's what you are really doing. Are those all the three the same? Are they different things? You think you're doing this, but are you? Where's the standard of measure? What did Yahweh say? Oh, I was talking to somebody the other day. It's like, in fact, I think it was Balaam Sass. You can find him on Facebook. He wrote this book. There was a picture from a church. It's like, okay, Easter Sunday, we're having a big ham feed, pork meal for everybody. On Easter Sunday, so you got this Ishtar, goddess of fertility. You've got the Sunday cult thing going instead of the Shabbat. You've got eating the abomination. And who do you think you're worshiping? Obed-ing? Not Yahweh's Avot, the Elohim of Israel. Well, then who is it? What are we supposed to be doing? We think we're worshiping the Lord our God, maker of heaven and earth, but not according to what Yahweh's Avot said in his Torah. Well, the Torah's nailed to the cross. No, that's what they told you. That's what the clerics told you because you are illiterate. So let's come back. Let's look at what he said. Psalms 119, starting with verse 57. You know, Yahusha ends up the Sermon on the Mount of this section of the Blesseds, the Beatitudes, by saying, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. You can say, no, he's supposed to be. No, we're supposed to be. And if we got the wrong God, we got the wrong words, we have the wrong meaning, and we have the wrong behavior, and we have the wrong testimony, I mean, somebody's going to hear these words. A bunch of people are going to hear the words, depart from me, I never knew you, you workers of lawlessness, or you workers of iniquity. Or the Greek word is anomio, which means you who do not have a regard for my law. My law? Torah? Chok? Mishpat. Well, we're going to look at what he said to Abraham. We're going to take a break here.